Men who send sexually aggressive messages to women you don't know online. Why? And has it ever worked? My old roommate used to do a thing he called phishing. It wasn't exactly aggressive, but it was still pretty bold. He would write a text saying "Hey cutie" and send it to 10 random numbers, 10 times in total. Back in those days, before smartphones, it didn't seem like the recipients were able to tell it was a mass text message. So within minutes he'd have sent it to 100 people. Out of those, maybe half of them would answer, saying the obvious "Who's this?" Out of those, maybe half of them were women. Out of those, he was able to convince maybe 5 or 6 that he actually knew them and they met a while back at a bar. At this point, he got them to trade pictures, not exol, just faces. He actually got a blowjob out of his little fishing expedition, but the woman was batch crazy. At the time, I thought it was genius, but years later I think it was actually kinda shitty. It was basically a shotgun approach. Or to use another analogy, if you pick up a handful of rocks and throw them at a stop sign, 1 or 2 are probably going to hit it. Probably a similar mindset to those who send aggressive messages to random women online. He was no different, just more polite about it. Yeah, I knew a guy like this. I lived with him for a year. He'd walk into a bar and aggressively chat up women. Sometimes he'd get slapped, sometimes he'd get a drink thrown in his face, but his hit rate was about 1 out of 5 or so. The dude was ridiculously handsome though, so the old rule 1, be attractive, was in place. He'd bring a different girl home to our flat every weekend. He was a right punt though. I ended up hating him for it. He'd kick the girls out on Sunday morning and I'd often wake up to find disheveled smoking hot girls in my living room trying to work out where they are and how to call a cab. I sometimes gave them a ride home. Fuck that dude. Last I heard he got herpes. I'll tell you why. Psychological projection. As a regularly frustrated male, you feel like if a woman sent the same sort of messages to you, you'd be incredibly flattered and excited, so you figure a woman would feel the same way. Unfortunately, this doesn't cut both ways and just makes women feel incredibly uncomfortable with you, thus exacerbating exul frustration when they don't respond favorably. Lack of social awareness leads to exul frustration, which when combined with aforementioned lack of social awareness leads to overly exully aggressive messages. Same reason men catcall. They by large think they're being flattering, not realizing that shit gets old when women have to deal with it nearly every day. NPR has a This American Life episode where a woman stops to ask catcallers what their motivation is, and they by large think they're being flattering. Cause if you're a regularly starved guy who hasn't received a compliment in years, you figure someone shouting the same sort of explicit stuff at you would be awesome. Source: was a socially unaware, exully frustrated guy in the past. Edit: and no, it doesn't work. Post blow up edit: I can no longer keep up with the amount of comments, but I'm happy to have stimulated a thoughtful discussion encouraging understanding and empathy. Together, we can discourage and eliminate harassment and alleviate loneliness. I was once an offender, but an open and empathic network of supportive friends helped me see the error of my ways so I could correct my behavior and be a more pleasant person towards others. The common dissent I'm seeing is, nah. They know what they're doing and are just a-holes to you. I say, do not assume malice where stupidity can explain the situation. Apart from true sociopaths, the vast majority of people at least try to be decent. Hell, even the fighters of Deesh by large thought they were doing the right thing. I'm not a religious man, but my favorite biblical quote is, "Forgive them, for they know not what they do." I know it's not easy to extend empathy to those who cause you harm, but that's where it counts most. One time it worked, and even after I sent it, I felt bad. I met with the girl and we ended up talking for hours about bad relationships and the often unnecessary bullshit that tends to come with them. I told her I did it because I was frustrated and wanted to see if it would work, and she answered that she responded because she didn't give a shit at the time. All in all, It was a really good afternoon for us. We ordered pizza afterward and spent some time watching random 99c rentals on Apple TV before I walked her to the bus stop and sent her home. Never done it since. It just feels wrong. You know what's funny about this to me? I'm a lesbian and single, so I use lesbian dating apps on occasion. There is a certain type of man who uses lesbian dating apps for some reason. I'm not talking about transgender women. I'm talking about straight men who get off on trying to trick lesbians. It took me about a week into my first lesbian dating app to figure it out. There were certain people I would be chatting with who would get exul right away. Like, it would be, "Hey, nice to meet you. How are you?" and the response would be, "I'm fine. My pussy is super wet," kind of thing. The apps usually have various authentication measures, and after the third or fourth one of these I went through the profiles of a few of these overtly exul women, found their real identity, and yeah, all of them were guys. Women don't do that. I'm bi, and if I had £1 for every man who asked for a threesome with me and my GF, that's not how it works, buddy. Imagine walking up to a straight couple you didn't even know and asking for a threesome. This is going to be a bummer for all those guys who habitually send D-pics. If I get an unsolicited D-pic, I find a picture of a nicer D and send it back. I don't want that Do you? That to me is the internet version of honking at attractive women or yelling out the window at them. I never understood it. They never stop. They just honk and drive away. Even if the woman was interested, these guys would never know, lol. They know she won't be. I think for some of them it's kind of like being a flasher. They get some kind of thrill out of exposing their exulity and forcing a woman to deal with it. Because our nice guys needs updated, refreshed and new content. Without nice guys TM we won't have any content for that subreddit. One time I told a girl I didn't know she had pretty hair. It wasn't exully aggressive nor online, just a compliment with no expectation of any kind of return. She said thanks and walked away. Her hair was very nice. Edit. Her hair was red. I have a boyfriend. I was younger, stupider, hornier and drunk. No, it did not work. Send Bobs and Vagina. Take off cloth. I was immensely frustrated with my lack of success. So I sent someone a message saying I wanna be on you, a quote from Anchorman, to someone, as kind of a goofy Hail Mary. I feel kind of bad about it because someone not knowing the movie would probably be creepers out about it. I don't remember if she mentioned it in her profile. As it happens, she thought it was funny and we went out a few times. Here's how I imagine it happens. Guy A. I got laid by a hot girl after only a few messages on a dating app. Using really great messages, and a profile that makes him seem like an amazing guy. Guy B. I'm going to try that, have that happen to me too. Using really creepy messages, and a profile that makes him look like an undesirable guy. Or Guy B. I got laid with a really hot girl after only a few messages. Guy B. I'm going to try that again with the next 10 girls I meet. Doesn't realize that the circumstances are completely different. It goes horribly. Dear God, Guy B is so frustrated he's talking to himself. I was on house arrest and Tindering. Honestly didn't give a shit at that point because I couldn't leave the house. So one night I match with this cute Swede and I tell her something about how I want to cook bacon for her after banging her until dawn. Anyway, she came over a couple times and we plowed. Never made her breakfast though. We certainly didn't bang until dawn either. It was like 3 minutes tops including foreplay. I respect that honesty, my man. I'm not aggressive, I just tell a hot broad I want to huff her toots. Username checks out. Yeah, who the frick are these guys? All I ever hear is laughter and derision and hilarious commentary from women about these kinds of messages they receive. Granted, I doubt most women would talk about it if they were responding positively to these deranged advances, but I digress. I met my soon-to-be wife online. I simply commented on how beautiful her and her daughter looked. I knew we had gone to school together, but didn't have any clue who she was other than her name. I had no intentions of flirting or trying to get to know her more, only making a genuine observation. One thing led to another and I'm now raising a beautiful family of 3. I look at my daughter, because she is just that. I've been there since she was less than 1 and she is the absolute joy and gives me drive and dedication to always do better. My point being is messaging women online does turn into bigger and better things. But I had no intentions of getting with my wife and it started because of social media. Really blows my mind even today. But yeah, any guy reading this who does message girls saying provocative or exalt things, stop and think. Do you really think if she is worth your time, she will respond to your horrific attempts at getting attention from her? TLDR, I did it because I wanted to have exalt conversations with women and it worked. I think people are overcomplicating this. I did this for years. A few things. Of course I knew that the majority of women would not respond well to my advances. Even if I were socially challenged, I would quickly learn that most women aren't interested. I have a lot of trouble believing that anyone is that stupid. I also never did it because I wished women would send me, unsolicited, exully aggressive messages. First, I'd immediately question if they were even women. If they did, spam bot or dude who downloaded some pics of a chick would be far more likely. I never did it because of some desire to force my exulity on someone. It was not some far-fetched cyber rape thing. It's not complicated or difficult to understand. I was a guy who wanted to talk about X. My options are to spend a bunch of time not talking about X until, after hours, days, weeks or months, we end up chatting about X, or to start talking about X. If you love stamp collecting, what do you do if there isn't a stamp convention nearby? You go around talking about stamp collecting. Most people are going to ignore you, but a few people, rarely, are going to be like, oh yeah, I love stamps. There is no malice here, no desire to make people uncomfortable, no lack of understanding. It was about finding an effective way to meet people that had similar interests. I haven't looked in years, but the truth was, if you went to a chat room or website that didn't cost money, you'd find 100 other guys typing with one hand and maybe 1-2 girls. That was the dream though, that I could just log in and meet a hot, local, girl that actually wanted to chat, send pictures, meet up. Supply and demand simply dictate that, for guys like me at least, there just weren't enough girls looking for what I was looking for. I couldn't find women, who weren't bots or professionals, that hung out in exully themed areas online. But I could find a ton of women online, in non-exully themed sites. For a long time, I'd just make friends with girls online. It was so time consuming. And boring. And in a lot of ways, it felt more unfair, more cruel. I was just a bored, horny kid, but here I was pretending to care about girls online. So that I could slowly and awkwardly try to flirt more in the hopes that one day, she'd show me her boobs. They were good people, and good friends or whatever, but I didn't want a friend. I wanted a girl to chat about dirty things for 20 minutes, then I wanted to go to bed. In a lot of those cases, I filled some meaningful void in their lives, but again, I didn't care about them. It was fake. Once I was convinced that nothing exult would take place, I'd lose interest in that particular girl, sometimes after they decided they cared about me. That's hardly nice. Eventually, what I found was that it was far easier to just be direct, knowing full well that a lot of girls aren't interested. But some are. If you send a exully aggressive message to 50 girls and 2 respond flirtatiously, that was a win for me. Maybe it was even just situational, a girl who'd just gotten into a fight with her boyfriend or was feeling particularly undesirable or whatever. For a small percentage of women, they were looking for the same thing as me. It's the exact same reason we all get spam. It's not an evil conspiracy. It's not because men are evil or stupid. It's a cost-effective solution to a particular problem. Everyone says spam is stupid and doesn't work, until you get a spam email for that exact thing you were just thinking about and you click on it without even thinking. That's a billion-dollar industry. Does it work? Absolutely. I mean, for certain values of work. This was way back in the day, but I didn't have to go out in public and get rejected by women. I wasn't old enough to go to bars anyway. Dating in my high school was tough and everyone knew everyone else. My freshman year of college wasn't much better socially. I could spend time on my PC while half watching TV or doing my homework and meet girls. Sometimes it'd just be a one-time thing, just an explicit chat. I'd start it off, because if I didn't, it would never happen. Again, just making the best of the given situation. I'd say something dirty, really the dirtier the better, and if someone stuck around after that, I knew that anything else I said would be fine. We'd have a dirty little chat, I'd jerk off, and then go to bed. At the time, it was better than porn, at least in my opinion. It felt real in some sense. Still, a lot of them became an ongoing thing. Maybe a lot is putting it too strongly, but some of these girls, we'd write back and forth for months. Unlike my previous online attempts at getting to know people, and then making it exol, this was the opposite. We started with the X stuff, kept doing the X stuff, and then slowly, I got to know them better. For the better part of 3 years, starting in high school and continuing into college, I had smutty pen pals online. A handful would trade dirty pics of themselves, but most kept it text-based. A pair turned into actual phone chats which I really enjoyed too. As I got older, and largely when I started drinking, I started meeting more girls that went to my university. And I'd rather go to a party with a girl I'd met, than go home and chat on the phone. Eventually I started dating a girl IRL and I cut down the effort of finding new online girls. Slowly the existing relationships I had would taper off. It wasn't an overnight thing, there was a ton of overlap, and with the girls I'd moved past the pure X stuff with, the most common thing we talked about were our relationships with other people. Maybe that's weird, but it didn't feel weird at the time. One girl had a boyfriend who was religious and she was kinky and felt like she couldn't share that with him. I thought it was hot, and really, anything was hot to me, but that worked out great for both of us. Another girl was really just like me, socially awkward, not a lot of confidence, horny. It was like practice dating, but with the added benefit of being anonymous. A lot of people have trouble being honest and open with real partners in real life. I know plenty of married people who have fetishes or exalt desires they aren't comfortable bringing up. With the online stuff, it was so easy, and really, even if I wasn't into whatever they were talking about, it was easy enough to play along. By the time I'd finished college, and the next 2 years after I graduated, I'd stopped sending messages online. I still hung out with college kids and dated more traditionally. I never had the balls to just be exully aggressive in real life without having a few drinks, but the approach works just as well in real life as it does online. I no longer needed to waste months hoping a girl liked me, trying to be extra nice to her. I'd just see if she wanted to do the things I wanted to do. Sometimes she did, and that was a great night for me. Sometimes she didn't and I moved on. May I suggest you differentiate between exul and exully aggressive? If someone sent me a message like, "Hey, are you into dirty talk?" I'd say no, but it wouldn't bother me, and some girls would probably be intrigued. But a lot of guys sense that is clearly more aggressive. I saw your picture and thought about freaking your tight punt or whatever, and it's obviously inappropriate and uncomfortable. It's also sad and exhausting, and a little scary, to hear the kind of going on in guys' heads sometimes. I'd rather not know the details. I think this may be one of the most accurate answers in this post. I also think you severely misjudged your impact on women. You say it wasn't malicious and you didn't want to make them uncomfortable, but you also acknowledge the vast majority were not receptive. And it is uncomfortable to receive those messages. It can be sickening depending on the message. But in general, it is intensely frustrating to get yet another Excel message from yet another creep. Yuke Strumpet was right to say you were selfish. Your actions made the majority of women uncomfortable, but you dismissed all of that because it suited your needs. It was incredibly selfish of you to negatively impact so many people because you valued your needs so much more highly than all of theirs. You either didn't consider the impact of receiving those messages, or you just didn't think those all women mattered. One thing I was wondering about, when those women actively responded negatively, did it matter to you? If they insulted or belittled your behavior, told you how wrong it was, etc., did you care? Or was it unimportant to you? Edit. Well, that gold was unexpected. Thanks, mate. You might not have had malice or a desire to make people uncomfortable, but your actions were still pretty selfish. Maybe 5% of women had net positive experience, but if 95% had net negative, that makes you 95% a jerk. Sorry you couldn't get your needs met more conveniently, and glad it worked out for a few, but that's not really an excuse for using all the other people for your own inconsiderate and selfish aims. You've obviously thought about this a lot. Try re-examining your actions but with more empathy. I was going to apologize if this unsolicited message makes you feel shitty, but I truly appreciate your honesty. This was a well thought answer to the question. I do not condone your actions simply because what you did was wrong. You acted selfishly and added to the weight women carry every day just for being female and seeking companionship. A few years ago I would have been like, hell yeah. That's just how guys are. Deal with it better if it bugs you. I deal with it just fine, but now I have never been more empowered as a female as I am today with the massive amount of guys being outed as a-holes. What's happening now after Weinstein is everyone has to face the fact that the treatment of women is wrong. It needs to be corrected and it's looking good that it can be. That being said, I think your answer is the best. To any guys reading this that do this for reasons shared with this guy, do the right thing and fricking pay a phone X operator or find a woman in a X themed site. The women who didn't sign up to CD pics or to be reduced to a wormhole solely for carnal pleasure deserve at least the modicum of respect and security owed to all. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe and leave a comment.